so much for joining us today. I've got Brian with me, and we're going to be talking about the idea of fostering innovation while also making money at the same time. But before we get to the questions that I've got for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Hi, I'm Brian. I am the CEO and founder of Straight Story Consulting, specializing in pretty much anything insurance or leadership wise. Part of my career history, the bulk of it was spent with Allstate Insurance. Spent 31 years over there working between auto and property across the country. Had great opportunity to do a multitude of things there, which prepared me very well to retire and have a lot of fun in the consulting space. So thanks for having me, Emma, and look forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you for joining me. So to get us started, you mentioned this expertise in the insurance industry, and the insurance industry is fairly complex. And especially as we start bringing technology into this space, there's a lot of considerations that need to be made to implement these tools and kind of drive digital transformation. Can you share a little bit about what you think insurers should be focused on when they're looking to bring in technology?
Absolutely, and it's a great topic, and obviously there's nothing more pressing right now in the industry. I hate the acronyms that everybody throws around and the cool terms like hot button and all that stuff. But I think sometimes we forget that whether it's a carrier or it's a business of any kind, having a roadmap, if you will, or a strategy by which you're going to follow so that you end up where you want to be. So for me, just a few of the big ones for me would be, make sure you define a clear problem statement. So what is it you're trying to solve for, and how are you going to measure it when it comes to adding technology or just changing processes, but especially when you're dealing with technology. And then you run into the situation, especially on the carrier side, speaking, exclusively about that, is prioritizing it. So as you think about technology in the insurance space, unlike being a service provider, it ranges from a sales arm to marketing to sales, to underwriting, to deliverable, to retention, to claims, to back-end processing, et cetera, call centers. So it's very complex, and a lot of priorities can bring forward to make a carrier successful. And then you got what I think is one of the bigger ones that people struggle with, or they try and find their way through, and that's buy versus build. And it's often, it feels right when I was in my time in the carriers was, hey, it feels really good. In-house solutions are the best because we can customize it, we can build them, their hours, et cetera. But the challenges associated with that oftentimes aren't discovered until later down the road. And what the true costs of that are, maintaining it, new legislative changes, which we all know regulations and regulatory stuff continues to evolve, especially in the property space and some of the auto space. If you want to bring new lines of business in, if you want new reporting, your data strategy, the security, especially with what we're doing with PII and everything else, have to be considered. So build versus buy, something to always think about. Another one that unfortunately I think it gets missed a lot of times is the change management impacts. You're going to install technologies to make things better, but do you really understand all of the people that get touched? So doing things like a stakeholder analysis to identify everybody that might be either informed, make it part of the decision, or actually be responsible for something. It's easy for sometimes to go new shiny objects and go, wow, this would be great. This will save us 5 minutes at this level of the company. And you turn around and go, you know what? We saved 5 minutes and we changed a process or the way we document a file, but we didn't realize we have to build an interface to get that new documentation process over to our underwriters or over to our other claims universe, et cetera, or to reporting. The last one I'd leave you with is communication strategy. When you change stuff and you infuse technology in this, especially in this climate today, which over the last few years, we've seen quite a shift in the emotional investment, I would call it, of employees looking at technology. And unfortunately, I think there's a somewhat of a theme or a belief out there by some people that the whole reason a carrier changes technology is to get rid of people. And I'm here to tell you, my experience, absolutely not. I mean, that can happen, let's not kid ourselves. I'm not, trying to Pollyanna this thing, but the reality is it's designed to get the right work to the right person at the right time. At least that's what I think it should be. If you're doing it, people are too valuable, too needed, and too critical to what we do in insurance claims, or if I'm a vendor, or even in my consulting world. I mean, I don't have a bunch of technology talking to you right now. There's just Brian talking to Emma. So it's all about the people. The one I would mention too there real quickly is don't forget about your sales force, and don't forget about your customers. When you carriers change technology, they communicate a lot of very well internally. And then all of a sudden, someone forgot to tell a key supplier, an agent about they changed. They're not going to go look at cars anymore. They're going to do a virtual. Agents got dealing with a customer. Go, why can't I get somebody out here? You got to be very, very structured in your approach. So a road mapping and really think through it.
So you touched on some of my favorite topics to talk about. So many people who are watching this are probably giggling, knowing I'm getting all excited while you're talking about a people focus and change management components, because that is so critical when you're rolling out technology. But I teased it at the beginning, and I'm going to come back to this idea of one of the things that you and I, while we were getting ready for this, talked about that maybe isn't as often spoken to when we're talking about innovation and digital transformation, is this idea of how do we allocate this bucket that we have dictated for digital transformation and make these investments while we're still creating benefit for the organization, making a profit. So what tips do you have for insurers to do things like paying for a proof of concept? Like, how do we work through that process to make sure we're finding the right balance?
That's a great one. And you're right. And we spend a little bit of time on that. And I think it's one that's missed is, let me just set the stage with it, is that, families across America and are dealing with rising gas prices, food, inflation, increased labor cost, everything that's coming through. It's a tough economic time for a lot of people. Those influences and those factors, those impactors, I'll call them, aren't exclusive just to the families of the world. They come into a carrier just as well. And even, I would say, in all service providers, because as those things impact the cost and of doing business and everything, it also affects the price. So it's what can we do what's within our control. And I think that's what we're talking about. So from my experience, one of the things that I think is a little bit, I don't want to say misunderstood, but underappreciated, is the majority of the carriers the one I've worked for, especially, and the ones that I work with today, and I know a lot of friends across the industry, and is they're very rigorous and they have a very consistent process of doing annual budgeting. So, why is that important? Yeah, everybody talks a lot about it, but keep in mind, if you're running a small company or a big company, you're going to they set out and they go look at 3-year historical trends. We'll talk property, of my water frequency, wind and hail frequency, fire, whatever peril it is, and say, here's what we anticipate for that happening. Here's what our loss ratios look like. Here's what our severities look like. Here's what everything looks like. And then the top 10 there, the big multi-line carriers they do that for auto, they do that for property, they do that for their pet insurance, for their rental, for their commercial. And then they put all that together and come out early in the year and say, look, I'm going to carve out 20% for technology upgrades based on all the data we pulled together, because it's critical that whether they're a for-profit insurance company or they're a dividend company or they're a mutual or they're out there doing holistic stuff through a brokerage, or they're doing stuff for charity, or whichever model you have, they have results that they need to be accountable for. They got measurements and they need to live into them. So the budgeting piece sets the stage for the whole thing for me. Doing it right, getting ready. So what happens? Well, you're rolling right along and all of a sudden you get hit with an 8% inflationary factor on a historical that's been 2 to 3% on when I set my forecast. If I'm a carrier and I've done anything, all of a sudden one segment of my business, if not all of it, is getting impacted by this adversely. Well, my 20% now is based on, let's say, $10 or $100, and I was going to spend 20 on technology. I don't have $100 anymore. I've only got 80 or 90 because of that. So it trickles all the way through the technology. So when those things happen, smart business people like all of us take a step back and go back to that budget and reprioritize. What's it look like for a family? We're not going to eat out an extra day a week. We're gonna stop eating out 2 days a week. We can go to one. For a carrier, it's what we're seeing on one of myself right now for auto is these auto severities and frequencies and loss costs are having such an adverse impact that carriers got to stop and say, look, I'm 65%, for example, auto business and only 35% property, and I'm not making my number in auto. I've got to pull back and figure out how to get auto fixed because the property's not big enough to move it. So they descope, they delay, or they defer, all of which make people crazy, honestly, because that's when you get into these 9 to 18 months worth of transitions where they keep pushing out digital transformation, but it's all for the right reasons because, I had a boss one time tell me, Brian, it'd be great to do what you want to do because I think it's really cool and really exciting because I love doing exciting stuff when I was in my job, still do. But he said, I still got to keep the lights on when we're done. And I'm like, got it. So I think that's important.
So one thing that I think ties kind of these two ideas that we've been talking about together is also the impact that it has on our people. So we talked about there is a intense need for change management and understanding the why behind a change for our employees. But we also need to recognize that when we implement new tools, there is going to be this step in period before we get these full efficiencies. And there is a change to the day-to-day operations of those people working in those positions. So how do we minimize or offset that impact that potentially impacts our productivity and our ability to execute tied to digital transformation as well?
So you're hitting the nail on the head, Emma. And if I had the silver bullet for that one, the answer, I'd be retired again. But long story short, it's accounting for it because when it comes to efficiencies, in my experience, anytime you change something, be it a process, be it a leader, be it whatever, a lot of things can endpoint. But if you're going to ask an employee or a leader to do something different, even if it's the right thing to do, just know there's a learning curve. And if you account for it, and when I say account for it, put it in your CBA, put it in your ROI. And those are two big things. Whether you use CBAs or ROIs, it's up to you. But and sometimes we can have a little call about what I think the differences are. But I use CBAs a lot more than ROIs. But long story short is it's going to take, and we'll just make it a X number of hours that I'm going to save. But they may not get to that full efficiency of 20 minutes for 6 months. So as you're calculating the benefits and you're calculating the what you're going to get for it and how they impact the employees and how you calculate the change management for your leaders and your employees, so that guess what? No one, unfortunately, I see this where people go, hey, why aren't you saving us 20 minutes? We put this new software, you're not saving me 20 minutes. It's been a week. What's your problem? You just don't get it. Software's no good. Reality is it's 6 months a lot of time, maybe 18 months. And you need to understand who's impacted by the change, because if an adjuster changes the way they handle a vendor handle client, the downstream affects the vendor, who affects the customer and everybody else. So it may be a longer curve. You may not see the benefits of new technology and digital transformation for a year post deployment. And that may be totally fine. But it's critical to measure it, it's critical to understand it, and it's critical to tell your employees that. So, you spend a lot of time talking about the people side and full transparency, showing them what's going on. Say, hey, I just make it, hey, Emma, you're doing great with that new documentation software or the voice activation software or photo identification or virtual, whatever it happens to be. You're doing great. You've actually taken, in my example, 3 minutes, save 3 minutes every day. And here's how we measure that. Now we're going to get to 20. You're not there yet, but we know you're going to make it. Employees can get excited and move to embrace the transformation versus saying, hey, why aren't you at 20 minutes? this stuff is supposed to be working. Our baseline in our studies, our initial 5 adjusters that did it, or 10, rocked it. And obviously, it's a problem with you, Emma, versus the fact that the software's not working or the change takes longer. Everybody's different.
That's such an important part of like just having that dialogue and setting expectations. People don't expect, anybody that's interacted with technology in their own life recognizes when you get a new phone or your phone goes through an update, it takes you a little while longer to move through things. But making that connection to what you're implementing and how it's going to impact their day-to-day, and also having that expectation from the leadership standpoint that it's not going to be switch, it's done, and now we're more productive and we're going to see that cost savings within the first 2 days of implementation. It's managing those expectations on both ends so that you can get the user adoption and the ultimate return that you're looking for on the back end that I think is so critical.
Tasks for people, that's a great digital transformation where I'm not having to, document a file. It automatically does it based off my voice recognition. That's completely different than flipping over to a complete different claim system. And you just got to understand, it goes back to what we started with, Emma, about the things you need to consider. What's your roadmap? Where do you really want to go and how you're going to get there? If you're going on vacation and you think you're going to drive from Wisconsin to Colorado in 2 hours, chances are you're going to be disappointed about hour and a half when you're just getting into Kansas or Iowa.
It's not going to be successful for you that way.
Now, you may make it, but you're not going to be a real happy camper 14 hours later. So it's the same with what we're doing here. It's people first. And there's a term that we use, and I'm going to date myself because I'm old, but you adjust the customer, then you adjust the claim. This is no different. You adjust, you understand your customer, which in this case could be a carrier on technology, and the employee, whoever's consuming it. Understand them, look, listen, learn, and then adapt. And my gosh, they help you build it. It's beautiful. And it does make a big difference.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Brian. Yep. Anybody who isn't already, make sure you make your way over to his LinkedIn, follow him there. And also reach out to either one of us if you've got any questions about the conversation that we had or things you'd like to learn more about. But thank you again for your time and have a wonderful day, everyone.
If you're looking for expert tips on how to get started with your transformation or looking to hone in on your approach, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to catch our weekly Digital Transformation Talk series, where we interview experts from around the world on how to make it happen.